Off. Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Bradley. I'm one of the product managers here at Flexera. Been with Flexera about 7 years, and I get to do the innovation of what's next. Like I get things that are kind of around the corner, and what I've been working on recently has been IT sustainability, and both from on-prem to cloud. And I've been pretty excited about it. And I'm excited today that you're all here and I get to share what I've been working on. And I thought the easiest way to start it, as you know, this is Earth Week. Wednesday was Earth Day. So hopefully that resonates a little bit with you. And what I thought I would do is I would start out and kind of simplify the complexity of sustainability and then maybe touch on a couple things that we're doing and then take it from there. Hopefully it creates some dialogue. Hopefully you have some questions, and we'll kind of take it there. So let me share my screen. And again, I'm okay with making it interactive. If we don't complete the slides, that's cool too. All right. So the theme this year, and I didn't get to pick it. The people that run and promote Earth Day, this year's theme was Our Power, Our Planet. So we're just kind of riding on that. And here's my mugshot. All right. So what I wanted to do was here in Illinois, we have a pretty good state in terms of we have access to nuclear power. We have access to Lake Michigan water, both does a great job for providing our citizens. But the challenge is that I saw this article in the Chicago Tribune, and this article talked about this farm that had been in the family, and it's in Manuka, Illinois. So I put a little map in there. It's about 45 minutes southwest from Chicago, and it's this farm that's it's been in the family for 60 years. The family decided they didn't want to farm anymore, and they decided they wanted to sell the land. And the first buyer to come along was a company that basically builds data centers. And as they were going through it, the town was pretty excited about it. So the picture on the left shows this group of guys, who all farmers, trying to understand, wrap their minds around, what used to be a farm is now going to be this large data center. But they're excited about it, but they're not sure how to fully understand it. The gentleman in the middle, his name's Rick Offerman. He's the mayor. He runs unopposed. He has a very famous son. His son's name is Nick. You might have seen him on Parks and Rec. Little connection there. I think I see where he got his funding. Nonetheless, he is trying to, bring some cash dollars into the town. He's trying to, he recognizes that there's some challenges about resource versus creating jobs. And on the right, just to give you kind of a glance, the size and scale of what this data center is going to look like. So it's 340 acres. And then for those that may have come to Chicago and saw Grant Park, it's a pretty large lot of land. But as they were going through this, they were having a couple of meetings. And in the first one here, when they're talking about this data center, they're now starting to talk about the resources. So here you have this small farm town, everything's going as it should, and this data center now wants to be built. So here they are in the middle, they're in this town hall meeting, and they're trying to explain to the local government what it's going to take to build this data center. And the first thing that they put on the board is 3 million gallons of water per day. Now, the 3 million is actually a trade-off, because the trade-off is if I can't get the original number, which was 6 million, then they would need more power. So it's either we used air cool to cool all the devices and we need more power. So they're asking for 700 megawatts of power. Now, in the state of Illinois, ComEd, who's our primary provider, they've already told the citizens that it's going to go up, your electric bill is going to go up by 40%. Now, the data center comes in and says, oh, no, we're not going to impact that. But we all know and understand supply and demand. It doesn't work like that. So here, what I want to do is I want to break down and help us look at what does 700 megawatts look like? What does 3 million or 6 million gallons of water, what that does, and then just kind of work through how that has a huge impact when we talk about IT and IT sustainability and the data centers and the impact. But then we, as practitioners, bring in this kind of awareness and having a better understanding of how, one, it impacts, but two, by understanding, maybe we can do some things differently. And so we'll have some of those ideas in the end. But nonetheless, when you look at the electricity, so they talked about 700 megawatts daily, that's enough power to take 500,000 households in Chicago and light them up. When you talk about 3 million gallons of water, it's basically 4.5 Olympic-sized pools. Now, in the state of Illinois, Minooka is just outside of a city that does not receive Michigan water, Lake Michigan water. And so there's a project that's happening where it's $1 billion project to build a pipeline from Chicago. Well, it picks off from one of the last suburbs that do, and then brings it down to this area. And that project is just getting started. And now here you have a data center that wants 3 million gallons of that water right away. And so that kind of makes a resource constraint. We talked about the acres. So for those that are football fans, that's 257 NFL fields. It's pretty significant. And then the amount of carbon that's going to come off of that particular data center is the equivalent of 260,000 cars. Now, the other part that a lot of people don't talk about, but you'll know it if you live by a data center, and that's the noise. All those generators that are running, the fans that are running, there's a buzz in the air, and it's hard to ignore, especially like today. It's a beautiful warm day here in Chicago. The planes aren't flying over my house, and I can hear data center. So it's just when I thought it was going to be a beautiful day. So now, how do I look at that? So there's a concept called megawatts. We've all heard that. And that is the equivalent of a big box like Walmart. So you've been into Walmart, they're huge, rows and rows and rows of product. Look up in the ceiling, you see all the lights. And to keep that store, to turn that store on, so to speak, it's a megawatt. Now, a gigawatt is 1,000 of those. So here you have this little town. And when you think about 1,000 big box stores, that's enough power to light up the San Francisco nightlight. So picture in your mind, beautiful San Francisco lit up at night. That takes a gigawatt of power to do that. And here, this little tiny data center wants 700 megawatts. So that's 70% of San Francisco's power consumption. Just pause to let that set in a little bit. Now, when you think about these data centers, so there's 3 types of data centers that are typically being built today. You have the mega data centers, which go to this gigawatt. That's the Microsoft, AWS, and GCP, Google. And they're large, I'm sure in Virginia, I'm sure you see it and hear it and know a lot about it because it's a big part of the area. And then, so you have those, you have private data centers where companies build it for themselves to manage their own infrastructure. And then you have the ones that are co-hosted, meaning a lot of times it's like the rack spaces of the world where you just borrow some space, rent some space. But nonetheless, there's 2 things to think about. One, it's not so much like sustainability is definitely important. I'm all for it. But I think there's a bigger problem at play. And the bigger problem at play is as they build these data centers and it consumes these resources and you hit that hot day and the grid's hot, there's not enough power and they can't expand much more because they've maxed out. So I think some of the challenges are going to be, how do you manage this power requirement, this water requirement, and what we can do as practitioners to, one, prepare for it, but two, get the information we need for the visibility. Because I think right now there's no visibility. And I think that's the opportunity that I want to present. So top of mind, so we have the Flexera state of the cloud, state of ITAM, and I believe we now have an AI, the state of AI. So we produce these reports. There's a lot of really insightful information. Many of the analysts and practitioners, they quote our stuff all the time. And so this particular one, 94% of our IT decision makers say sustainability is a growing as a priority now that they've, fully embraced the cloud and now trying to understand its impact. And then 87% believe their organization needs to do more to improve their IT sustainability. And we see it every day. We see it in RFPs and RFIs. We see it from internally when we onboard new employees, people who choose to work at our company. It's one of the questions that they ask is, what is our sustainable approach? Are we on the right track? Do we incorporate it into our culture? All important questions. And I grabbed this one down here. A Chat GPT query is 10 times as much electricity as a traditional Google search. I think probably everyone has seen this, but I wanted to call it out in case you didn't. And when you think about that, and part of the challenge is, as you probably know, the GPUs, those are the chips that AI runs through, and they run so hot. And when they run hot, the water is the only, well, it's not the only, but it's the most common used to cool that off. So it basically has a pipe behind it, and the water touches the copper, and then it's able to cool it down, and then they cycle it through. The challenge is that even though it's a closed loop, it still dissipates, and less water comes out of the other side when they try to release it. And there's a lot that needs to be done. I know there's a lot of research that's being done. There's different approaches. They're trying to reduce the heat, but nonetheless, it's a challenge. The other parts are, we talked about 10x electricity used by a single Chat GPT query. So we talked about that. The amount of water evaporated, even though it's closed loop, it still evaporates. And the other part I like to say is the cloud isn't the cloud. It's really someone else's data center, and it's thirsty. Now, how do we help? So when you look across Google, Microsoft, and AWS, they are the masters at creating SKUs. They remind me of the old telcos. They just come up with SKUs left, right, and center, and they have all these SKUs. But the challenge is at the SKU level, there's only a few that really call out the carbon impact. And so now when you work with the cloud providers and you want your sustainability information, what they'll do is they'll give you last quarter's info, and it's aggregated. So you have to start to peel the onion to understand where this carbon's coming from. And then for those that kind of follow along, there's this concept called greenhouse gases. That's how they calculate carbon. It's a framework that says this is how we calculate, how water is used through IT as well as through carbon. And then for those that have gone through some of the reporting, the government regulations, there's the state of California, the state of Illinois, and the state of New York have put some legislation in place to start capturing that. But in Europe, in particular, they have this report called the CSRD, and then there's many versions of it. It kind of reminds me of college. You have the same course but different professor, and so each one of these government regulations it's the same topic, but questions might be a little different. But nonetheless, it's challenging to capture their carbon, but more importantly, it's hard to manage it. And so what I've been working on for these last 3 years was, how can we address that given the uniqueness? Now, how I got into this was I was part of the customer advisory board, and about 3 years ago, and one of the, I believe it was one of the large insurance companies had raised their hand and said that, Flexera is uniquely positioned to help in the world of sustainability. You have all the critical information. All you need to do is put a lens on it that's green, and you can really help companies, one, do the right thing, two, provide the visibility, and then of course three, address all the regulations that are coming down. And so the first one here is this cloud sustainability. So we have this tool which basically pulls your cloud bill and it understands all those SKUs. And so we have a methodology. We did a partnership with a company called Green Pixie. And so they kind of do the math. They go and look at all those SKUs, they figure out the math. And then what we do is we look at your cloud bill, we understand all the utilization. We understand what data center it's in, we understand what grid it's in, we understand the power demands, we understand if it has any alternate power sources other than coal, things like nuclear, hydro, windmill, or solar. So we have all that data and we can help customers see where to do these placements. In addition, we have a product called IT Visibility, which grabs the manufacturer provided for your physical devices. It starts in the data center. And so we have two ways to calculate your carbon footprint. The one's the manufacturer. So when you pick and buy a device, there's typically two PDF files. The first one is, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, it's marketing, buy it. The second one is the tech specs. What's the details? And then that's where we get that information. And then we work with you as kind of a services engagement because different companies capture utilization differently, but then we can take your utilization and calculate it very similar to how we do the cloud. The end user devices, I like to say this is death by 1,000 paper cuts. If you look at your desk, chances are you've got 9 devices. You got your monitors, you got your laptop, got your keyboard, mouse, probably an iPad, maybe an iPhone or a cell phone in general. And before you know it, you got 9 devices. And it's great at the moment, but then you start to do some upgrades. And you like, okay, well, I'm just going to replace this and put this under my desk or put it in the closet, or and that accumulation is there's the recycling of it is an area of opportunity. There's companies out there that'll do it. There are communities like ours which will do a pickup. You take it to the local baseball stadium, and then they've got areas where you can drop off your monitor, your TVs, and all that stuff. But not every community is doing that, and it's piling up. And what's happening is when that gets thrown away, the motherboards have all kinds of different materials that can be melted off and reused. And that often gets overlooked, and that creates a big problem down the road. But nonetheless, if you're aware of this, where you're able to manage it better, and when you manage it, from cradle to grave, having that workflow is important. Now, and then networks. Many networks have a lot of information, but they also produce a lot of carbon, and not all networks are scannable, but we have a process to gather that. But the key part here is it's not so much that we can tell the news, show your carbon report, where Flexera and the research that I've been doing is now that I have this information, not just for one customer, but for all of our customers. And now I'm able to do what we call value-based recommendations. And what we're doing is because we see the trends, the patterns, we've done the research, we know where all the data centers are, we know their power grids, we know the SKUs, we know the different products. Now we're able to take and do this insightful approach where now that you have this visibility, you can start to do the right thing. So that's kind of one of the key areas. And in our world, we talk a lot about FinOps. If I did a raise of hand, how many people are familiar with FinOps? I think there's a hand thing up there. Yeah, I know Keith is. He's the king of it. There we go. Right. Awesome. Thank you. No, it's good. So FinOps is this, there's Nan. FinOps is this organization it's built this incredible framework, and they've got a lot of very passionate people from very large companies that have come together and really put together a best practices. And as part of that, they have this concept called inform, optimize, and operate. And basically the inform is just, cloud resource availability. What's our cost? What's our carbon? And it's supposed to be just getting visibility. Then they have this concept called optimize, where you're eliminating the resources that are wasting both time and carbon. And then operate. Now that you've got this methodology, you're able to track, measure, and monitor, you're able to optimize, and then how you operate. And what we're able to help customers do is this what we call 2x business value, meaning you've been laser focused on expense. Now what we're trying to do is open up the GreenOps so you get a double win. A great example here, we've been working with many customers around the world. We've been working and doing what we call decarbonization reports. So we take all your data, we process it, and then we give it back to you and we show you all the areas that you have an opportunity. And we find things that typically fall right below the financial threshold. For instance, we found one, it was called like Magic Demo. And people thought it was an active demo, but the reality was no one was using it, but it was doing 10 to 15 different data sources. It was tied together with multiple machines. If you looked at it individually, it was right below the financial threshold, but then right after, it was the one that's producing all the carbon in your data center. That's one example. Another, we've had customers that were shifting workloads between different data centers to reduce their cost. And then when we showed the carbon impact of that, that was a double win. And they were able to use that towards their offsets. So a few ideas there. All right. So I had to at least put a couple things for us to do, at least a walk away. One thing that seemed pretty simple was, when you're done for the day, putting your laptop in sleep mode. And if you do that for a year, that's enough power savings to run your refrigerator for a month. It sounds silly, but it's like, whoa, I didn't think about that. The other is AI is prevalent. There's no going back. Toothpaste is out of the tube. AI is pretty powerful. We see what its capabilities are. But what we can do is each model is not the same in terms of what you should use it for, and not always going to the top model to do a 10-line email. So the thought process is maybe trying to select the appropriate model for what you're trying to accomplish, knowing that any model out there is better than what it used to be before AI came along. So keep in mind, don't always have to put the biggest model for the simplest tasks. And then the other thing, and when I did this presentation earlier, they're like, yeah, I'm just sitting here deleting my emails. But if you were to go and sort your email, oldest to newest, and just started to delete a little bit, the quiet thing that no one really talks about is if you're not deleting your emails, it takes up storage, which burns electricity quietly and forever. So if you think about all those old emails, they're sitting there and they're just, burning away. So nonetheless, a couple of ideas, a couple of takeaways. I know it doesn't taste as well as a drink, but nonetheless, it was my approach to give you some ideas for Earth Week here. Some exciting news. I talked a little bit about Green Pixie. We've had this amazing partnership, and they've been doing some trainings. And because we have this partnership, I can offer you this free training. So I can drop the link here. It's academy.greenpixie.com. And then there's a section in there. When you go to pay for it, you don't pay for it. You put this coupon code in, this Flex Cost 100, and then the course is for free. And then when you complete it, it gives you this beautiful badge that you can post on LinkedIn. And if you tag me, I will share, like, subscribe, and amplify your efforts. Appreciate that. And I think what this will do is it'll take what I just covered today and then put you in a pretty good mindset and understanding where you can really make an impact quickly. I've enjoyed all three courses. Again, it's, as a product manager, you never pick your favorite feature. It's kind of like you don't pick your favorite child. But if I had to lean, I really like the GreenOps for AI. I thought that was pretty insightful.